All right, so welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for this panel discussion about open source contribution. I'm really glad to have so many guests that I personally look up to because of their contributions. And today my idea is really that we find out together what is working well, what is not working so well in terms of open source contribution from the community standpoint, from a personal standpoint, and for the agencies that we might work with. So yeah, that was really my idea to set up this panel as a space for knowledge exchange. I would like to pass the mic on to the group to quickly introduce ourselves and maybe share what is the main thing that you would like to learn in today's panel. Did I already mention my name? No. I'm Josef Dabernig, I work for Unic as a consultant. I've been involved in the Drupal community since 2007. I've been a contributor in code, but mostly in organizing events and connecting people in the community. So today I just want to learn about more experiences and see what are the next steps that we can take as a community to empower ourselves to do more open source collaboration and contribution.
Hello, my name is Lukas. I'm originally from Germany. Live in Zurich now, work at the company Deep. Been in PHP open source for over 15 years, I think. I was the release manager of PHP 5.3. I haven't done much with Drupal. I might actually start doing more with Drupal, but I was somewhat involved with Symfony adoption for Drupal 8. And today what I want to learn, I'm really interested in the questions that are coming in to learn more about what other companies might be doing, but also what their concerns about doing open source while being paid.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm designer and front-end developer. I come from the design world, but I started doing front-end Drupal, I think 8 years ago or something like that. And nowadays I invest some time contributing to Drupal with coordinating the admin UI initiative, but I've also organized events, and I'm also a partner of on the company, so I can see both sides on this.
Hello, my name is Michael. I'm the CTO of Amazy. I started with Drupal probably I don't know, also 12 years ago, something like that. And was very involved myself in Drupal 8 multilingual. Now I do more management stuff, so not many contribution things anymore in terms of code. But I really try to convince other companies to also do more contributions. And I think that's what I want to learn today is, actually from you, what are fears, like Lukas also said. We're trying to do a lot of things, from a company point of view. We try to open source pretty much everything we do, and I would like to understand what are the fears, and maybe also can share some experiences where we had fears ourselves and they didn't come out as we feared.
I'm Wenger. I'm living in the French part of Switzerland, working for Dietiker. I'm pretty newcomers to the open source part of Drupal for 2 years now, but I already have many contributions into the core and to others purpose projects. And I'm also organizing WebMardi, which is an event in Lausanne, mainly in Lausanne, in the French part. It's one of the biggest meetups in the French part of Switzerland. And what I'm looking for today is to learn or share how other developers deal with open source and how a company can deal with open source also.
Yes, I'm Miro from MD Systems, founder. We're maintaining a bunch of modules for Drupal, ported multiple things to Drupal 8. I'm very interested in helping people to establish the cultural shift in their company, to allow them to contribute and figure out what is maybe limiting them. And I think it's in most cases a very personal thing, so I'm happy to hear, yeah, maybe what you're interested in, or how to transport your individual interests into this direction.
All right, so there's a lot of good questions. For me, my first one that I would like to ask you is like, what's the purpose, or why? What motivates you to contribute to open source?
So yeah, as a developer and newcomers in the open source, maybe I'm not the most fit for this question. My motivation, my main motivation, is to show people what can I do. If I have to, for example, job clients and stuff like that, I can show them, okay, I do stuff and it's concrete. I can see what I can do. And the other part is to help people, to help community, to just share my code, and people will peer review my code, and I will be better in my field, because people will criticize my code and tell me, look at that, you could be better here or here. So yeah, that's my main motivation. Develop something.
I feel like for me it's almost an obligation to do, because I mean, if you use open source, we use so much knowledge and so much code that other people have sweat, tears, and maybe sometimes even blood to build and to spend time. And think, especially Drupal, like we use so much knowledge of so many different people. And now if I find a bug and I fix something and I spend my own time, it's just a tiny bit of additional work to now contribute it back. And I feel like if we don't do that, if never somebody would have done that, you would not be able to actually use the tool that you have currently. So yeah, for me it's something like I feel like just using the tool and using somebody else's time is for me enough motivation to give back as well and make it better as a whole.
For me, I would say it's more common sense. I come from the design world, and I remember all the designers, like I'm from that, but I'm not going to show you this. And it goes like, it didn't make sense. For me, it goes like, let's just work together, and whatever we build, it's going to be better if we just join forces. And then, I don't know, I just came to Drupal, and it was like people just, it was in everybody's mind, this way of working, and it just like, I don't know, everything, a lot of our day-to-day work should be something like that. I mean, not just working isolated.
I think for me, so the main reasons have shifted. So I think initially it was more what Kevin was saying about that I saw this was the opportunity for personal development. But now I think it's actually two things. So, I mean, most of us developers, we somewhat care about efficiency. And it just seems so inefficient to not share the code. It just seems so, just from a humanitarian point of view, it just really hurts me to. And the other thing, I think it's great business. And obviously, I want to get paid for my work, and I think it's just the best business decision to do it.
Well, one perspective, like when I started my company, I was totally alone, and I was full of ideas, and it really allowed me to start to contribute, to connect to people and get feedback from the best global available minds, and I think that's the best thing. Like you have access to so many awesome people in our network.
Cool. So maybe following up to that, as we can see, there's questions popping up. So they are crowdsourced, and feel free to ask your own questions on slido.com and enter the contrib hashtag. While I'm trying to navigate that, thanks to the support from Dan, who is moderating in the background. So maybe following up on the personal motivations, we already had some connections with the business side of things. But maybe for the end user or for anyone, like what's the advantage of open source software over proprietary software for let's say, the people that pay us to do the work for them.
I guess there's like a lot of different advantages, but I think the one for me that is really, that I think is not really looked at enough is that if one of our customers actually, like a lot of times we build a lot of custom code for them, and then that custom code needs to be maintained over the future. And if we build some code and then it is contributed, then you almost, like, it's not that you hand over the responsibility, but that means also other people can also contribute it. And a lot of the sites that we're building, they're running for like 4 or 5 years, like they're a long time. And so you maybe like don't have the person anymore that initially implemented it, or you maybe don't know yourself anymore. But it helps basically, yeah, to maintain the code that is running on your website. Now suddenly not only 2 or 3 people of the agency that you worked with are maintaining it, but thousands of people can now maintain it. And I think that's what I started to use a lot as like, why should I do that? So telling them that their code will be maintained by others.
Yeah, for me, from developer-centric still, I'm not the best developer in the world, and I can create stuff. And when I work with people, 1 people, 2 people, and maybe 100 people, the product will be amazing because we have all a different background, we all have a different vision, we have all different ideas, and together we can create an amazing project, and I can't do it by myself.
I mean, so if I talk to a customer about adopting open source, I think usually, so at least at Leap, we mostly do very custom projects, but there's still always someone that has done something in that direction already. And I see some of our customers that have adopted proprietary content management systems, and the productivity is just horrible because they need to do everything on their own. They just get this very raw thing, and they need to write every line of code themselves, and it's just, the productivity is not there. Like, the sales is great, that the sales team can make really nice pitches, and there are maybe even some really great tooling internally, integration with marketing and so on, and these provide a lot of value. Maybe this is all the value we're looking for, but most of the time they want to integrate, build something on top, and this is just not productive. And then later on, I think that's a very key thing that Schnitzel said, is that at Leap we made it part of our contracts that everything that isn't secret sauce, that isn't specific to this project, we can open source. And we don't have to talk about that with the customer anymore. But when we do this contract, they sometimes ask, well, but you're going to take stuff that we paid for and give it the world. Like, that doesn't seem fair. And then we say, no, it is totally fair because you're going to get stuff. You're going to get contributions, you're going to get people that maintain it, and rather than paying us every year to improve that code, you're going to see other people do that, and you don't have to pay for it. So I think it's a win-win in that sense.
So maybe think about highly critical security issues and the situation when you need to update the website. It's definitely worth trying to keep your patches and workarounds as low as possible, because then tools like automation are perfectly doing their job, so you keep your stress level low and your people are much more happy in that situation.
Awesome, thanks. So the next one is more like a personal one again. I've seen. Whoops. Should it be? Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how to select that, but I will read it out for you. It's the second one. So I've seen most of you have been active for a while, and from my personal experience, I know that it's not always easy to dedicate time to contribution or to open source software if it's not directly related to client work. So do you manage your personal agenda, or how's your time management to allow you to keep contributing?
So in terms of code, my contributions have gone down a lot. So for a while I was among the most active people on GitHub, so for a few years. And this has gone down. I'm probably not in the top 10,000 anymore or anything like that. And actually I don't contribute that much with code right now. I work more on diversity and inclusion topics, which should ideally lead to a lot of code being produced. But I still obviously participate. But I think, so I get a lot of company, like freedom from the company to do this. And like I said, it's actually sometimes part of the project work to do it. But yeah, I still invest quite a bit of spare time. But I emphasize that I also have some, sports. My family is very important. I share with my partner equal amount of time that we focus on our daughter, and I think these are very important. And I think these are all things that have to change more. We have to get more paid for doing open source, and we have to rely less on free work from privileged people that can afford to work for free. And I think that's something that has to change. So I think right now, the way that we've done it 20 years ago, I think it has started to change in the right direction, but it needs to change more.
I would say in a personal perspective, it has been changing during the time. I mean, I have time, but I was able to spend a lot of time contributing, and other times it wasn't possible. So for me, what really worked was focusing on the same topics always. So because it's easier to keep track of what's going on there, and also getting involved in stuff where I actually knew the people that was there. So it was easier to approach them, and also people that I had a good relation with them, because it's kind of easier to disagree, for example, or to get information about, hey, I'm sorry, I've been out like 2 months, what has happened during this time. So for me, it really worked focusing on UX and on front-end stuff in Drupal.
I would say I managed it pretty badly, I think. But as I say, I try to focus on a few issues when I code for the Drupal core, for example. I don't really work on 20 or 30 issues. I will try to work on 5 or 6 issues until they are closed and fixed right into the core. It's easier for me just to focus on a few problems and a few issues. And I'm lucky because my company gives me some time to work on open source, especially when it's related to the projects, of course. And otherwise I work when I'm motivated on my spare time.
Somehow it happens that virtually every project that we're getting is related to some of the open issues and things that we've been thinking of. So kind of we really don't like to have like boring projects that just do the absolute minimum, and we just take our time and say, now for this project I want to work on this and that, and it's kind of, we do not even talk too much about the amount or maybe percentage of that. It's just that it's kind of a habit that we're picking. Like everyone has his personal motivations and kind of will take one of these challenges and push things forward.
Cool, thanks. That's a good segue to a question that was not on the top, but that I wanted to bring to the top. So, what strategies do agencies implement to participate or to benefit from open source? Like you've mentioned, like how you do it from your own perspective, how you bring it into, maybe sometimes you can use it in the work time, but I would like to better understand like what's like the models or the benefits for your agencies to contribute.
Yeah, for the strategies part, how we participate, we try many things at Untitled, like one fixed day by week to work on open source, never work, because sometimes you fix the Friday and you have nothing to do with Friday, you don't want to work on this Friday, so you don't do it, you have to wait until the next Friday, so for us, we don't work this strategy. So for now, our strategy is to just go on a project, and if we find issues, we can contribute to the core, or find issues on the modules, and contribute to the modules. That's the most part of my job. I do it like that, and the benefits is, as they said before, we don't have to maintain the code. We have it on the modules, it's merged, and it's finally back on all of our projects. We don't have every patch on every of our projects.
Yeah, so one thing we do now is that whenever we find something, and because a lot of times the process is like you install something on a customer, and then the customer comes to you and says like, hey, I would like to have that changed, or can we extend that, stuff like that. And then we tell them, yeah, we can do that, but we will open source it as well. And one of the things that worked really well is telling the customers that they will actually get a discount if we open source it, but the customer will also pay for the time that we will open source it. So there's I saw like 2 different models. One of them is you just charge the time that you actually implement, and then the open source part is free. And I think that's not the good way, because then you do a lot of free work and you shouldn't. But if you give the customer a discount, the interesting thing is for them it looks like they get something cheaper, which is from a customer point always what they want. And you don't have to worry that like if it suddenly takes a lot longer to open source something, you don't run into the risk. And that worked so far very well. And I think I also want to add there that it's not just like what works really well for us, not just like open source it and not tell the customer, but allow the customer to be part of the open sourcing part as well. So like on Drupal.org, attribute them, ask them to create an account on Drupal.org, and tell your developers to attribute the customer in the commit, or like write blog posts about it, tell the customer about it. It maybe sounds crazy at the beginning, because a lot of times I think we also feel like we have to shield the customer in front of the community, but I think it should be totally different. Like, and at least the type of customers we have, it works very well. And then they are excited, and they come back for more, and they start to understand what an open source tool on the community really is.
For us, at the beginning it was like he was saying, for us it was, we tried strategy about contributing the last Friday of every month, and when you realize the Friday has gone and you just find an issue and you have to start the issue, reading it, but you don't have time for anything. So with time, we realized that there's actually more people interested in contributing than others. For others, sometimes, sadly, it's just like extra work for their day-to-day work, so it doesn't add any value for them. So for us, what we did is the people that is more excited about contributing, we just give to them more time. I mean, if they show interest for that, we give them more time. And in the last month, what we did is, for us, it's now half of my time is actually being paid for contributing. And the good part of that is that the same person already has the knowledge and has the time and doesn't have to invest time to discover what to work on and getting involved and knowing everything. And it's not starting from scratch, so the same person is always there. And for us, on I would say on a company's level, it's good also because it somehow the credit that you get on Drupal.org, it also is important for clients. If you have a way to demonstrate to the final client, hey, I'm doing a lot of stuff on the open source community. It's a way to showing it, and it's really valuable. So it's an important thing to have a way in the Drupal community to show what you have done. So credits and these kind of things are pretty important for us.
And there's sort of direct and indirect benefits for customers. So one thing that we do is basically, so we're a self-managed company, we don't have management, and basically every employee can just decide if they think it's worth it to do open source while at work. And of course the benefits are, we gain credibility, like Christina said. We might also, not just with customers, but also with potential hires. But also we are just better, so we really are more productive. So it's not just a marketing tool in that sense that but we just get better at using a tool. We can of course also shape the open source project a little bit more to fit more into what our common needs are. So I think these are all reasons why people might just choose to allocate work time to open source. And then we've done similar things, like Schmid said, where we have given discounts, or where maybe sometimes we on our own time then extract the code, and I mentioned that we have made our contracts in such a way that we can do that. But I kind of raised this question to Schmid because I also wondered, like, why should a customer get a discount? Like why should they pay less? I mean, because they're getting something, they're getting actually more value from the fact that it becomes open source. And so is the work to open source it bigger than the benefit they get? That would be a reason why the discount, but I don't think it is.
I mean, I fully agree with you. It's luckily now with the hosting part where we have where we do everything open source as well. There we said we will never ever give discounts. Like if a customer comes to us, asks for a feature, that feature is going to be open source by default. And also if the customer requests something from us that we feel we cannot open source because it's like so specialized for the customer, we tell them that we're not going to implement it. So I think, but somehow it's different from an agency point of view and from a product company point of view. Somehow the people understand it different. And at least right now, I think there are maybe some customers that really understand that they don't want you to get a discount. But I feel we're still in the point that we have to, there's still a lot of convincing needed for the customer. And with that discount, they give you maybe a try, and then maybe the second and the third time, maybe you don't need to do that discount anymore. But we just, or I saw like when I tried to convince them, it's way harder. Because a lot of times we convince the project manager, and then that person has to go to their boss. And you are actually not part of that discussion to the boss. And so you need to give them ammunition to convince them to open source. And I think if a project manager walks to a boss and says, hey, I figured out a way how to get a discount, it's not even a question. It's silly, I would agree with you, but it's how things work right now.
As a customer, I would fear the situation that I'm investing hundreds of thousands of Swiss francs into a project that is just implemented in some lonely cellar or so, and I'm dependent of successfully running this for years, and there are thousands of people who are totally, like, permanently pushing forward with the project independently, and I need to run behind of them to keep my project up to date. I want the agency to be involved and to make sure that my risk is low, that my project is easy to maintain. And I cannot afford the risk in such an investment situation.
Nice. So, do you think all projects funded by public money should be released somehow as public code? Is that a thing?
Yes, 100%.
Any objections? Things to add?
Apart from security and personal data and all that obvious stuff, right?
I can make an example. So we just went into a project with the Australian government, and they have now a premise that if there is an RFP and there is a product that is closed source and a product that is open source, and it has the same price and the same value or the same features, which is never going to happen, unfortunately. But that's how it's written. It says they have to choose the open source one. It doesn't say yet, though, that they are only allowed to open source, so they're not there yet. But I talked to one of their higher-ups in the government and asked them, like, why do they do that? And they say, basically, one of the government's job is to invest into the country themselves. So a lot of governments want to choose local companies of their own country, which makes sense. And so if they invest into a company with proprietary software, they invest every dollar or every Swiss franc, they only invest once. Because at the end, the company will strive and they will hire people, and that is good for the economy. So that's why the government chooses local companies, that they invest with that. But if they do it open source, they can multiply that dollar into multiples. Because now the government not only gives a person in their own country a job, but they also create something that can then be used by other companies that will help drive the government, the economy as well, or even other governments again. So in the Australia one, the idea is that what we're building now from a federal level, that this can be used by their cantons or their states as well. And that's how they start to argue. For them, it's not about like, it's better, it's for the community. What they use as an argument is the pure money. So if you invest the money into open source, the government will get more out of it. And I think I was very happy to see that, but that made so much more sense.
There's a wonderful financial allegory as well. When you use open source products, you have the chance to hire local service providers from your country or your region. So as a government, you can take our taxes and you can put them straight back into our businesses, which is better for your local economy. And two, there are actual maps, and I have some copies of them from the UK Cabinet Office that show before and after their reforms around IT that happened in the last 5 or 10 years. And before the reforms, where there was a heavy focus on large projects and proprietary software, there were 5 dots on the map where all the money for government IT went, and they exactly mapped to Microsoft, Oracle, HP, and so on. The reform included a preference for open source, just like that one, which is not imperfect, but it also changed the security model, made it easier for local companies to register as government service providers, and expressed a preference for projects less than £100 million, which made it easier for smaller companies to bid on. And the current IT service provider map for the UK goes across the whole country and all of Northern Ireland. So people are definitely investing money in their own economies. It's very, very powerful.
I mean, so ideally, also the governments really, or the municipalities and cantons, etc., realize that there's an opportunity for synergy. So obviously, not every canton is going to be the same, but there's going to be enough opportunities for synergies there. But I think there's maybe one call to the audience, or in general, we need to be there. Like, we need to have people willing to work for the government, to make them understand, to also be able to understand how to leverage open source efficiently, because they don't know. They have a lot of expertise in somewhat efficiently leveraging proprietary software, maybe doing some deals here and there, but they don't have this level of knowledge with open source yet. So we need to take those jobs and be there.
Yeah, just read about that. 1 or 2 years ago, there was some conversations in Barcelona about, because the local government is actually putting all the efforts into open source in general, on all the levels that they can. But what we saw from the local open source communities is that actually the proprietary companies have a lot of contacts and a lot of lobbyists, and we lack of that. We don't have, not even locally or internationally, well, I'm not sure on high levels, but what we saw locally is that we didn't have a single voice to represent us in front of the local government. but the local government had a lot of people with good dresses saying, I know what you need, and that was a pain point there.
Nice, thanks. Yeah, I was gonna say that this sounds all super easy and straightforward, and the arguments that you've made sound like very reasonable. But I'm glad also the conversation shifted a little bit into the next question already. So, what's mostly blocking open source contributions, and what can we do to overcome those blockers from your point of view?
I don't know if there's some contributors here in the room. Maybe 2, 3, 4. Oh, come on, yeah. So yeah, the first time I contributed to Drupal, I was fear because I have to create a patch, a dot patch. I don't know what it was because I work with GitHub and I have my interdiff in the web browser. I can create inline comments. People can share with me. They can even suggest now. And I was like, I have to create a patch and an interdiff. I have to send it to a thread. How that? It was very complex, very complicated to contribute. There's a lot of bloggers from it, and most bloggers today, this is the complexity to contribute to Drupal core or Drupal modules. And I'm looking forward to the GitLab integration because I think it will be a game changer for the contribution in Drupal.
Yeah, I'm more want to use the business point of view, like why should you contribute code back when you implemented some stuff for the customer? I think it, as mentioned before, just first of all, add it to the contract. So I think that's an awesome idea. Just add it in there that you say, look, every code that we write, we can open source. And a lot of times the customers don't really read the contracts, and then you have it in there. So I think that's a really good. But also, yeah, just do it. I feel like it's we talk a lot and we have a lot of fear and we feel like, oh no, what's happening then? And stuff like that. And really, like we talked with the government before, yes, it needs a lot of lobbying and stuff, and it also needs lobbying within the customer. But I think it's really worth spending maybe a day once with a customer, explaining them, try to explain them what the open source is, and invest into that open source understanding of your customer. Because if you do that once, that customer will understand, and in the future a lot of discussions are going to be much easier. And I think that's a bit the fear from us sometimes, that we feel like we shouldn't do that, or will they understand, or that. And it is an investment, it is standing in front of people and trying to convince them of something else, and you maybe will fail the first couple of times. But I think if we all do that more and are the ambassadors of open source, then as a general good, yeah, we can do it.
In many companies, you will see management level people that have no idea about open source. And we are the experts. It's our job to basically explain them that by contributing, like we're creating value for them, it's our way to solving their problem and to make them succeed. There will never be an assignment of these people like you should contribute today. It's really our job to explain them why it needs to be part of our work.
I think I really love open source, what it has done for my life, what it does for a lot of other lives. But one of the most shocking things, and I will talk about this in my session a little later, is that open source is not diverse. The numbers, so when we're saying, more hands produce more code, but we're shutting out a huge amount of people from open source development. In proprietary software, there are less women, more women, than in open source, right? And that's something I thought was, like, when I realized this was totally shocking for me, because I always said, we're so open, right? So we must be better at being inclusive. That seemed to be so obvious to me, but it's the obvious, it's the actual opposite. And I think it's easier for if you're in proprietary software development and you're a wheelchair user, you will find that your employer will be more accommodating than the open source community, right? And there are reasons, there are valid excuses for this, right? An open source event does maybe not have that financial situation, and maybe the company, they're really good at getting some incentives from the government where they actually get, because they employ this amount of people in a wheelchair, they actually get some money. So I'm not saying that there are no excuses for it, but we're actually still not leveraging all the people that might want to do open source. And if we're talking about adding a number, 10% of the women that are currently doing proprietary moving to open source, that's more than what I think we can do convincing a couple more customers to do open source.
I totally agree with that. I would add there's something that is not that obvious, but it's not about only about women. It also is that we are not only developers in the community. There's also designers, there's also people that actually write documentation, project managers, even final clients, content authors that are going to be there somehow in the community. And if to design, for example, don't know if you remember the status page it took for us, I don't know, there was actually a pager on the issue for discussing the design. So I don't know if you've seen a pager on a Drupal issue. So yeah. So if to discuss the design, you have to base the changes on an issue queue and wait for people just arguing about, I don't like blue. It's like, I don't care if you don't like blue. I mean, we have to be able to adapt our workflows, developer-oriented workflows that have been there for years. We have to take care about getting other kind of contributions involved also. And it also takes into account like how you get credit to people that is contributing with accessibility, with design, with documentation, and all of that give importance to all of these things, because at the end, to the company that is paying to that person, that is going to make a point, and it's a really good argument for getting more investment on that.
Well, thank you, especially also for bringing up the diversity topic. That's shocking from an open perspective. I think we have to work on that. So we're almost out of time, so I would like to combine these two questions. What do you think is a good way to avoid burnout in the community for maintainers? Or what are projects and initiatives that we can look for in terms of inspiration for contribution?
So what helped me like 2-3 years ago was really to have a coach and to have somebody that I trust and somebody that I can talk to, because I feel a lot of times in the burnout or like in the situation when you're like very stressed, you tend to forget, or you lose the ability to look at the big picture, and you're like so deep into GitHub issue queues, or in my case it was like emails that I had to like answer or whatever, and having somebody that you can talk to, that you trust, that also maybe asks the right questions at the right time, really helped me in like understanding, oh wow, I'm starting to get there. Like I think that's, and I'm not talking about like a coach that you pay. It can be a good friend. It can be just somebody that yeah, you just tell how you feel, because a lot of times that I realized I had all the answers in my mind. Like the coach didn't tell me the answers to my solutions. A lot of times I had them. I just had to voice my problems to somebody that I realized what the answers are, and that I think is what we don't do enough. And on the other side, if you have somebody that comes to you for help, try to like be open, listen to them. Because I myself, like, you maybe do one effort in asking for help, maybe two, but that's it. And so and it can really be anybody, so like just be open on both sides and to talk about it, and I think that's what helped me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I did something pretty same 3-4 months ago. I wrote a module still on alpha, syndrome, and it was pretty not stable. And one of the issues came 3 months after I created the model, and someone insulted me because the model didn't work. And I take it really personally, because I sweat and blood for this model, and it was very hard for me to read this line. The guy just asked me to remove the module because it's shaky module, etc., etc. It was very hard. And I shared my experience with my colleagues, and I asked him, I did something wrong. And it was really helpful to just talk to someone and be rassuré, I don't know what to say in English, but yeah, just talk to people around you and just tell your feelings.
I already said that. For me, what really worked was getting involved in stuff where there's people I can work with. I mean, try to avoid toxic people, because these kind of people usually don't care about what you're going through, how hard it can be for you. For example, for me, I'm not a native English speaker, and for me being all day in a sprint with people speaking in English, now it's a little bit better, but like 4 years ago, being somewhere where people really didn't care about if I was understanding them, actually getting some faces like, you didn't get that? I'm sorry, I did not. So it got really important. And also right now, getting like an overview of what I've lived as a person that has a little bit of responsibility in an initiative. I have to make sure that new contributors are getting credit, because there's a lot of people that actually take an advantage of the knowledge that they have, and they try to credit themselves from some stuff that they haven't done. And I think as someone in the community that can see or can work on that, we have to try to protect the people and mentor the new people that is coming. And as he was saying, if someone asks for help, or you see that they need that help, just do it. Sometimes for you it's going to be super easy.
For many people, contribution starts in their free time, and suddenly the situation develops in the company that things are just supposed to work magically, like your involvement, like we're expecting that the open source things you're involved in as a maintainer are just bug-free, or you spend always the extra time at home or at night. It's really important to reward the work of these people, and to create room in the working environment that this kind of work is rewarded and supported, and that's the only way, like, to release pressure from these people and support and invest.
I think burnout has always been a problem, but I think at least in the past few years it has become a topic that people talk about. So I think in that way we've made a huge step forward. There are several also projects within the open source space that really bring this to the table, that are very expert at this topic and provide a lot of information and resources. I think one thing that open source projects have to get better at, however, is really managing this as a risk for the people, but also for the project itself. So with that I mean, like, don't put so much pressure on one person. Like, if you cannot do something critical with just one person, then you have to slow down. You have to find additional people that can also keep track of what's going on. Don't make quick decisions where you expect people to voice their opinion within 24 hours, or then say, well, you had your chance. Like, if it's a big decision that is hard to roll back, then it has to it has to wait. You can't go at breakneck speed because it's just too dangerous. So I think that's something that open source projects have to manage more actively. Like really, when they get something, okay, well, this is brilliant, but who else understands this, right? Because if nobody else understands it, basically it's that brilliant person that has to fix it, right? And if a security issue comes up, all the pressure's on them. And the other thing I think that Christina also mentioned is don't rely on toxic people, right? So toxic people that can produce a lot of code, always think, like many people are saying, well, yeah, but this person, they've done so much for this project. Think the opposite. Think about how much code is not being produced in your project because people left because of that person. And one person can be very brilliant, but it's unlikely that they're as brilliant as 100 people. But a toxic person can easily push out 100 people from your project.
Wow. Well, I would really like to thank all of you for sharing a lot of personal stuff, a lot of stuff about open source, and the audience for providing your questions. Make sure to contribute, but in a safe and responsible and sustainable way. I'm really looking forward to see you all at the rest of the conference. And thanks again to all the panelists.